Okay, we are now on the next page here, which says drawing an activity network from a precedence table. So all activities with no predecessor begin at the start vertex. All activities which are not predecessors for another activity end at the finish vertex. Now, before we get into dummy edges here, because dummy edges do make things more complicated, I just want to go through an example of drawing an activity network from a precedence table and really just go over these 2 points here. So this isn't in your notes. I just want you paying attention, and we're going to go through this little example here. Now, whenever you're asked to take a precedence table and create an activity network, you need to use a pencil, okay? Because it's a bit of trial and error sometimes. You'll make a mistake, you'll rub it out, you'll redraw it. You need to use a pencil, people. You just need to. All right. Before you begin drawing your activity network, you want to identify a few key things. First things first, you want to go to things that do not have predecessors and say, all right, this is obviously where I'm starting from. This is my start point. You also want to identify your finish point. Now, remember, your finish point is your activities that are not predecessors. So, for instance, you see how the letter I here never appears in my predecessor row. The letter H does, the letter G does, the letter F does, the letter E does, the letter D does, the letter C does, and they all do except for I. So that means I is going to be where I finish because it's not a predecessor to anything. Another thing that I like to take note of before I actually draw my activity network is where I'm going to have two lines joining together. So that's going to be D and E and G and H. So that's going to be important to recognize as well. Okay, once I've identified my start, my finish, and my joins, that's when I like to begin. I begin by with my starting vertex. So I'm going to write start right here. And I know that from my starting vertex, I'm going to have A and B. So I'll draw a line out here. We've got A. I'll draw a line out here. Whoops. I'll draw a line out here. We've got B. Perfect. Let me cross those out. Next, this is telling me that I have C, which emerges from A. So the predecessor of C is A. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to draw C. Take note that I'm labeling the edge and not the vertex. That's important. Also, coming off A, I also have D. So D, the predecessor to D is A. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to call this D. Perfect. Cross that one out. Next, the predecessor to E is going to be B. So I'm going to come to B and I'm going to draw E. All right, so I might come here. I'll draw this as E. I'll draw a line there. Perfect. Next one. The predecessor to F is C. Now, here is C, and I've got F coming off that. Perfect. So here's F. Immediately before F, we have C, so that makes sense. Next, we have D and E should be joined together. So notice how I've messed this up. And this is why you need to use a ruler. Oh, sorry, a pencil and a rubber. What I should have done, and now it doesn't really matter because I'm going to get a rubber. I'm going to rub this out, and I'm going to say, hey, this should be connected there, people. That should be connected there because D and E need to be connected together because G has both D and E as predecessors. So from that, whoops, let me try that again. From that, G emerges. Perfect. So as you can see, D and E are predecessors to G, and that can only occur if they're combined. And again, that's why you use a pencil and a rubber, because that will happen. You just rub it out, you correct it. All right, next. We've got what? We've got H and F. All right, H and F. So that means from F, we've got H emerging. So from F, we've got H emerging. Now, this is where I'm going to be like, hey, I know that G and H need to join together. So that means I'm going to come here, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to join them straight up. That is going to be H. G and H are meeting together. And as you can see, F is an immediate predecessor to H there. And then the last thing that I'm going to have is I, and the predecessor to I is G and H. So I'll come over here. This is going to be I. This is going to be where I finish. So here is my starting point. Here is my finish point. and I am all done. That is how that works, people. We have done it. Make sure to use a pencil and rubber just in case you make any mistakes, and always begin before you draw your activity network by identifying the start and the finish and where you're going to have joins. I think that's very helpful. All right, I'll see you in the next part.